Hello and welcome back to a brand new Player 2 review discussion. My name is Paul James, and today, for the first time in a little while, but certainly the most recurring face on this platform, it is the Player 2 editor and legend, as I always go with, Matt Houston. How are you, mate?
Right, good. We've got a stable connection, just using dodgy equipment, but that's fine. One day we'll get it all perfect, and everything will be good. So
this house of yours will be back up and running sometime in the
yeah,
future.
and then I'll be really good. Yeah, it'll be great.
Until all of a sudden we're kind of pressed for time again, and we're doing it suddenly, while you're at work or whatever, as we've done in the past. We keep finding ways to make
we'll make it work
whenever we can.
We're adaptable.
Yeah. So for anyone who's just listening to the audio version, it may not be apparent, but certainly if you're watching the video version, I've really dolled up our background here. We are talking about Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, a spin-off to the Borderlands franchise. I guess it leapfrogs off the Assault on... Oh, damn it, what's it called? Yeah, that's right. From Borderlands 2. So it's quite some time ago, basically a decade ago at this point. But I guess there's been a lot of questions from a lot of people about the game. You've played it in full at this point. You've put about 25 hours in. You've seen the campaign to the end. You've delved into the other components of the game as well. Mm-hmm. So tell us, Matt, is it a worthy Borderlands game? How does it stack up to, say, 3? I guess is the most recent entry. What do you think?
For me, it's more fun than 3.
Right.
It has this wonderful sense of whimsy that the other Borderlands games don't have, because it's all the whole premise is coming from the mind of Tina. So the whole game, you're playing Tina's avatar, essentially, in this Dungeons and Dragons, or bunkers and badasses, as she calls it.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's all very tongue in cheek. There's a lot of the jokes come thick and fast, like more so than previous Borderlands games, and they always had a lot of humor in them. But I don't think I've laughed this loud in a game in quite some time. There are some genuinely funny things going on, and they're perfect.
Kind of meme jokes, because that's something that Borderlands has obviously always done a lot of, and it works or it doesn't. And and even then, maybe a repeat playthrough, it doesn't hit quite as hard because you now know the joke. But is it still the same sort of meme sort of humor, or is it really we've established a character portrait here for Tina, and we're leaning into that and who she is?
We are leaning into Tina a lot, and her kind of view on what the world is, which is kind of psychotic in its own way.
Yeah.
But there's just it to me, it was very almost Naked Gun like in a lot of ways. There's some real kind of dad jokes that you just don't see coming in the way they set up. There's an early quest, a side quest this is, so it's not important to the story, and this will explain the humor really well. So you see an archer in the overworld, and the archer says to you, I want you to go and get me the greatest bow ever. It's the best bow. I'm going to kill it's going to be gross. It's going to complete me as an archer. It'll make me perfect. So you go through this big quest chain, you do the quest, you get to the end, and you hear him talking to you in your microphone. He goes, all right, in that chest is the bow. I so can't wait to get it. And you open it up, and it's a bow tie. And then he starts going, yes, this completes my outfit. I'm perfect. Now I'm the perfect archer because I've got the greatest bow ever. It's just like... Yeah, okay. Look, you just can't help but giggle at that. You've set up this big quest chain.
There's a little smirk on the face already, and I haven't actually seen it. Yeah. I don't have the voices. I don't have any of the other context, and it's gotten the right response from me already.
Yeah,
so,
it's
okay,
just
I'll see where you
this big smile, and there's this just innocence and whimsy about the humour in this one. There's not so much in other Borderlands games, because this is from the perspective of someone's imagination. So, and that someone happens to be an explosions expert. Yeah. So it is very, very cool, and it's very much helped by not only Ashley Birch's performance as Tina, but as Wanda Sykes and Andy Samberg are these two actors that are with you for the whole thing. And Wanda Sykes is playing this kind of bit psychotic robot that wants to kill everything, and Andy Samberg's playing kind of this romantic hero type. He's actually called Valentine, and he plays this kind of, he sees the romance in being a hero and that sort of thing. And then Dragon, the main bad guy, is played by Will Arnett, and they're all perfect. Like,
Right
just
people for the
really
right
well
roles.
delivered, well cast. Wanda Sykes is probably the funniest of them, and that doesn't really surprise me. Her dry voice and that kind of unique Wanda Sykesness
Would actually really
is very much
complement
present.
and would really complement the rest too, I'd imagine.
Yeah, absolutely, and you get a feel that a lot of this was kind of off the cuff. You can feel it feels like Andy Samberg and Wanda Sykes were sitting in a room, kind of bouncing off each other, and
Yeah.
that's how it may have been that, or it may have been written. And if it's been written really well for these two actors because they work really well together.
No, that's awesome to hear.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we won't wade too much into that because, look, I don't think spoilers are too big of an issue when it comes to all things Borderlands. But we'll leave it to people, the viewer / listener, to enjoy the
Yes.
story, the humor, all of that sort of stuff themselves when the game comes out later this week. But the moment to moment, is it
It's Borderlands.
tried and true Borderlands?
It is Borderlands with a few little twists on things. Obviously, this is a fantasy setting, and it's allowed the developers to go even more crazy with the weapon design. Because they're mixing magic with traditional guns, and it's created, and they've obviously thought about it in kind of an off-kilter way, and it works. Some of these guns are just amazing, and it adds different wrinkles to the game.
And they wouldn't be, look, held back's maybe not the right phrase, but like there is baggage that came with the DLC, for example, Borderlands 2, because it was still underpinned by the core Borderlands experience. Whereas here, the slate is completely clean, and you can develop these weapons and all of that stuff around this theme from the get-go, as opposed to kind of it being an afterthought like it would be in Borderlands 2.
So in Borderlands 2 and 3, there's a gun company, and you get them, and instead of reloading, you throw the gun and it explodes.
I can't remember which company it was.
But in this one, that same company, instead of exploding, the weapon turns into a 3-headed hydra that shoots fire at their enemies, or it turns into a flying little bat that shoots freezing bullets at the enemies.
Yeah, right.
So it's creating, and this is the busiest Borderlands game. There is a lot going on in the screen, like between spells that take up the whole screen. Like one of the spells that I used a lot was it's like 3 big ice cyclones that would come and attack enemies, and and then you've got normal spells, and then you've got weapons that fire on their own, and you've got a companion character. So there's a lot going on at any one time. It's very busy.
I mean, you've had me sold on the TDO guns already, like that in terms of the Hydra, like that's, I'm in.
Yeah, already. It's super cool. It's very cool. It all seems to work. It does create a few little technical issues. Some slowdown I did come across some slowdown. I'm playing on a fairly high-end computer, an i7 with a 3070. Also, I do want to mention, though, NVIDIA at this point haven't released drivers for the game yet. So it could be just that pre-release thing, and it will be fixed up as soon as NVIDIA releases their drivers, and they're like PC gamers will know the drill. Like if you're playing the game before the drivers have come out, you may yeah. So that could be the issue. Can't say, but yeah, there was definitely some slowdown and some frame rate stutters with all the craziness going on.
Was it still substantial, or was it still fairly infrequent?
It was fairly often, but it would resolve fairly quickly. So it wasn't like making the game unplayable ever. It was just noticeable. You definitely noticed that drop from, say, 60 frames down to 25 frames. So it wasn't unplayable frame rate, but you definitely noticed that drop. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. I guess that's a bit of a shame. Systemically, in terms of, obviously Borderlands has had its skill trees and all of those sorts of things. Any little differences to that? I mean, obviously there's going to be core, Wonderland sort of elements there, but any
the fantasy element. Yeah, so there's six classes this time. So 2 more than the traditional 4 classes for a Borderlands game.
Yeah.
At least before DLC, anyway.
Yeah, pre-DLC. Yeah.
But at the 15 level mark, you get to add a subclass. So you get to pick another one of the classes and add that to your skill list.
Yeah, cool.
So for example, I started off as the Spore Warden, which is kind of the ranger, I guess. Yeah. So you've got a little killer mushroom side character that helps you along. But then I added to it the warrior class, which gives you melee bonuses and all sorts of other things in the end. So they kind of complemented each other really well. But you can mix it up however you want. It makes it feel very tailored to you, much more
Once you've
so than the
committed,
other
you're stuck,
Borderlands.
though.
Yeah. No,
Like,
you can change your subclass at any time. You can't
okay,
change
cool.
your original class, but not any time. Once you've reached a certain point in the story, you can change your subclass to
Yeah, okay,
whatever you
cool.
want. Yeah, so it's like a story element thing. But yeah, um, and then you get to the end game stuff, and you can mix and match as much as you want, and just play around and have a bit of fun with everything, really.
Talk to me about the world itself. So the stuff that we get to shoot at, like nice diverse range of enemies, because I guess that's always been
Yeah,
one of the criticisms I've had for Borderlands. You got maybe 10 to 12 kind of core enemies, and then it's
enemies.
just different skins on those after that point, and they might fire corrosive instead of a
Yeah.
flame based, like, but it's more or less the same sort of thing. So is it a similar sort of story here, or do we actually have a fairly
There
wide
is a bit
range?
of that, but there's quite a range of different kind of classes of enemies, I guess. There's the kind of skeleton slash zombie
Yep.
type. There's the pirate type. There's the kind of raider type. Then there's the bigger the monsters, which is like these land sharks. There's crabs. There's spiders. There's dragons. There's
Okay, so there's Jess out.
yeah, they're spider crabs actually. So she might be all right.
Maybe she's in. Yeah. Jess, let us know.
Hard to say. Hard to say. But there seems to be quite a decent variety, and within those kind of subtypes, there's 3 or 4 different varieties. So
Yep.
there'll be the skeleton with the gun, there'll be the skeleton with the sword, skeleton, magic skeleton, that sort of thing, and it mixes it all up that way. Boss fights are exceptional. Best boss
Oh, awesome.
fights in Borderlands, hands down.
That's good to hear, because again, Borderlands
Yeah,
2 being the real highlight in that space, and I didn't think
yeah.
3, as much as I thought it was a pretty good game, I don't think I was as negative on it as a number of people were. That it didn't hit the high
I
marks that
don't.
Borderlands 2 did, especially in terms of
No.
the bosses. So I'm glad
Yeah,
to
no,
hear
boss
that.
fights are really good. Once again, that fantasy element, it's really freed the developers because essentially there's no rules
Yep.
because, the whole premise is from Tina's mind, and if Tina makes it up, it happens. So, yeah, they've kind of run with that really well and taken some really unexpected turns with
Yeah, okay.
design that you wouldn't think of, but then when you play, you go, "Hey, that actually really works." I would have never thought of that myself. Um, yeah, so they've done a really good job in that aspect, I think.
And then the world design itself, like, are we looking at some fairly unique? I mean, obviously, again, Tina's mind's going to throw some
Yes,
crazy shit at us from time to time, but like fairly diverse sort of environment, or are we
it's
kind of
lots of
contained? Again,
diverse.
you told me that
Um,
20 hours was completion, so it's perhaps not
yeah.
quite as long as another Borderlands game. Does that mean that we're getting
Well, to be
less sort
honest,
of
that
quote unquote
was.
biomes to?
I reckon I probably only did 50% of side quests.
Yeah, okay.
So I was at level 34 when I finished, and I think, well, once you get to the true endgame stuff, is level 40.
Okay.
Um, so it wasn't too far off, but I think I would have had a good chunk of side quests that I didn't do. There are actually areas in the game that you don't go to unless you do the side quests.
All right.
So
No, that's good
they're
to hear
not
then.
like they're actual big maps that you can go to just for side quest activity. And you go into the map, and all of a sudden, like 6 quests pop up that you can do within that map.
Sweet.
Because there's this overland structure where you've got a top down look at your character, and this is once again a like a Dungeons and Dragons spin. So you play as this top down look, and there's random encounters that pop up. There's little side quests, there's secrets you can find in this overworld. There's these little arena sections, which is one of the negatives I had with the game. Not because it was particularly bad, but Borderlands combat is not tailored as an arena shooter.
No,
So
no, it's not.
you think of arena shooters, you think of Shadow Warrior, you think of Doom, you think of games like that are all about this fast-paced kind of
Push
multi-skill
forward.
combat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't work so well with the Borderlands style. It's not bad by any means. It just happened too often.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
That's a shame.
so
And something for me to keep my eyes out for, I guess.
Yeah, so you play it, you get a side quest, you go into a cave or a dungeon, you do 3 waves of enemies, you walk out again, and it's all in these arena sort of maps. And while it's fun, it's just not what Borderlands is, I guess.
Yeah.
Had it been Doom or something with that fast-paced combat built in,
that's their shtick.
It's the whole deal, right? But yeah, with Borderlands, it doesn't quite work, and especially depending on what weapons you've got. Like, it could be a cakewalk, because you've got a weapon that just wipes them out. Yeah, that's it. So it doesn't have that skill level that a good arena shooter does, and there's a little bit too much reliance on that, I felt. But that comes to the end game too when you go into the roguelike mode. Called the Chaos Chamber.
Let's talk about that, because it was only fairly recently announced that this was a thing. So
when you finish the game, it's pretty good. Like, that actually adds some fun to this kind of arena system because of the modifiers and the different things that you get in a roguelike experience. You kill enemies, you earn gems, you can buy modifiers for the next map in the roguelike. It works like any roguelike, you carry it on, you get 3 lives to finish a 5 encounter and a boss. So you get 5 encounters and a boss. And each time you can pick whether you want different modifiers that make it easier or harder. Your rewards alter depending on what you pick. If you pick harder, you get better rewards, better loot.
Yeah, makes sense.
And then at the end, you've got the decision. You can use the gems you pick up to make things easier for yourself, or you can use the gems at the end to get better loot, and buy the loot at the end of the run. Yeah. It works really well. And it's kind of a fast-paced, sort of quick, 20-minute run in and out. It scales with you. So the first encounter's probably 2 levels below you, and the boss encounter's probably 3 levels above you.
Okay.
And that's how it kind of plays out. So it gives you a nice challenge every time. Doesn't matter your loadout, you're going to have to work to beat this guy, especially as a solo player. I don't know how it scales with multiplayer. Obviously, pre-release, it's a bit hard to get a hold of that sort of thing.
And you, by your own admission, were running to the clock, so you've just been surging on ahead while this guy over here is.
I've been powering through that. But yeah. It seems like a fun system, and I think it's the sort of thing that will be very easy to mix up with updates. So I can very much see Gearbox, adding wrinkles, adding events, that sort of thing to the Chaos Chamber that will mix things up. It's a great way to level up, great way to get some really cool loot, some crazy loot like the Slamming Salmon, which I just got. That's a melee weapon.
Yeah, okay,
it's a big giant fish that you whack people with.
I mean, that can only be fun, right? I'll also mention there for listeners/viewers, Matt was running to the clock because of a holiday he's going on, not because of some really short turnaround. Because there's been dialogue about that in other games recently. I want to make sure
we had plenty of time for this.
Lots of time.
I just wanted to get it before he left the country.
Yeah, and that's fair enough too, because the Borderlands games are awesome, and if you can squeeze it in before you go, why not?
Absolutely.
Were there any other kind of key aspects that you wanted to touch on at all? Obviously, as you mentioned, the multiplayer is not something you've dabbled in up to this point.
But, no, not really. I managed to get one co-op match going, and it works. Borderlands have had co-op down since game one.
Works a treat.
They've just nailed that, and that's no different.
I think that made Borderlands 1 kind of enjoyable, really, because the original was a bit rough.
A bit stale, yeah, it was. I think, to me, I think it feels more like a labour of love, this one, than Borderlands 3 did. I think Borderlands 3, in a lot of ways, felt like you were running over old ground.
Yeah.
And it wasn't bad. I enjoyed my time with Borderlands 3, but nowhere near as much as I enjoyed number 2. Because I felt like I was just doing the same thing over and again. But this kind of fantasy setting that Tina has really allowed the developers to just go crazy and try anything, really. And there is a bit of, throwing, mud at the wall and see what sticks in some instances. But
you can do that when you're in this setting.
You can, and more sticks than doesn't. It is a lot of fun. And, there's some errors, and it's Borderlands at its core. This is not going to win over new fans.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't the game to convert the bloke that didn't like Borderlands. this is for Borderlands fans. I just think they've had so much fun with it, and it comes across in the gameplay, which is really nice to see. It is a genuinely smile-inducing game, I guess. You play it with a grin on your face. There's lots of jokes, some really corny jokes, but kind of in that Naked Gun style of comedy where it's a bit slapstick, a bit silly, a bit over the top. It never punches down. It's never mean. There's constant jokes about
it's usually
keeping
self-deprecating for the most part.
Yeah, there's jokes almost every hour or so. Tina jokes about keeping the game rated T for Tina. So there's no alcohol at the tavern. It's strictly soda, and that comes up quite a bit. And
she's underage.
Yeah, she's underage. So, yeah. and there's this constant theme of Tina's warped mind and characters that she's created in this Dungeons and Dragons world that she loves, but the other two characters aren't real fussed on, and so Tina gets upset about that, and there's a lot of fun there.
I've got one personal question.
Yeah.
How much hammerlock is in the game?
None.
Oh, thank God. This is like, I know it's like an unpopular opinion, but I can't stand that guy. So I'm thrilled that he's not in.
There's a few cameos from old Borderlands characters, like Claptrap shows up, of course.
Of course.
Couldn't
not.
What's the big guy that punches everything?
Brick.
He was in Brick. Brick shows up, but he's the fairy punch father.
Of course he is. Yeah.
And yeah, the kind of narrator is the head of the Crimson Raiders from the first game. That ends up dying in 2.
Yeah. The name's escaping me right now, but yeah, I follow what you mean. But yeah,
there's these cameos from Borderlands characters in there, but they're obviously playing fantastical versions of
piss take versions of themselves.
Piss take versions of themselves. The chick from Borderlands 3 that loved coffee. She's in it as a knight. Things like that. And of course, Princess Butt Stallion.
Of course, Queen. Butt Stallion has to be there. Oh, is it Queen now?
Queen Butt Stallion of Brighthoof. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'll just take that one in when the time comes.
Yeah. So there's Borderlands love there for fans, but you won't feel out of place if you haven't played the games before.
No, good to hear.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll wrap things up there. Matt, your written review is going to be live on the Player 2 website as of now. By the time that people are watching and or listening to this, you can go to the website player2.net.au and check that review out. But where can people go to just see what you're up to? Maybe get some photos from your holiday or whatever the case happens to be.
Yeah. If you want to see photos of Fiji, head to Huso81 on Twitter, or you can just head to Player2AU. I'm back from surgery now. After I'm back from Fiji, I'll be back giving Paul a break, who's filled in magnificently for me while I've been off.
Just checking my eyes.
So yeah, I'll be back running things, probably breaking everything that Paul set up while I was away, but that's how it goes.
Matt has learned how to use Canva in the time that he's been gone. Like I've taught him some little tricks there, or I didn't really. I just threw the platform at you and expected you to work it out.
Work it out.
But you did so it's great. Matt will be back at the helm soon. I haven't posted anything Nickelback related yet, so I might do that before, just as one final little nudge as he walks back in and I peace out for a bit. Because I'll be off on a holiday shortly after you return. But make sure to go check out Matt's written view on the website, player2.net.au. Again, Huso81 as you mentioned, Paul James Games for myself. The website's player2AU. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel. The Patch podcast feed as well. 5-star reviews, that'd be awesome. But otherwise, thank you to 2K for providing copies of the game for the sake of this review. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you later.
Yes. Catch you next time.